Hi everyone, Richard here with Why Are You Watching Me? And I am out here at the Waterside District, getting ready to cut through Town Point Park because we are taking a cruise. It is a beautiful 65-degree day. This day, the day after Christmas. How many times can I say day in one sentence? So as of this recording, it is December 26th. It's a nice, bright, sunny day. It's a little warm. It's about, like I said, about 65 degrees. But I'm going to be on the water, so I figured I'd bring a jacket just in case. Oh, let me not do that. Yeah, let me not point the camera directly at the sun. That's not good. Like I said, what we got planned today is we're going to take a cruise of the Elizabeth River. About a 2-hour cruise on the Victory Rover. And it should be a lot of fun. I've not been on this one before. So, come join me. We'll see what goes on. As we cut through here, we see some of the Christmas decorations are still up. Obviously, because Christmas was just yesterday. But they're going to be getting ready to start preparing Town Point Park here for New Year's Eve. As far as I know, the New Year's Eve festivities are still on. They usually have a big party, concerts here. Usually the concerts are, whoops, try that again. I've got a new handheld Steadicam system, so I'm still trying to get used to that. But usually the stage is right over there, and have the dressing rooms and everything for the acts. But they'll have a stage set up over there, and of course everyone's milling about here at the park. And put the camera back up. And then they'll have a barge right out there on the Elizabeth River where they'll do the fireworks. And we went out on the Carrie B, which looks like an old steamboat, to watch the fireworks on the 4th of July. That was a lot of fun. Over there, you might see that is the Victory River. That is what we're going to be traveling on today. I'm very much looking forward to this. I've not done this. Everyone else in my family has. My dad most of all. Mainly because he works on it. So, yeah. So he's got a reason to be there. So, yeah. That'll be fun. So the kids could feel the sandpaper because that was like what a shark skin felt like. In fact, they used to use shark skin as sandpaper because it's so rough because that's like these tiny little hooks. And then I had 3 fish that I would juggle with and show why fish travel in schools. It was a lot of fun. I got paid by the hour, $10 an hour, which this is back in 1995, 96, I think it's 95. Yeah, I want to say 1995. So $10 an hour was pretty good money, back then. And I only had to work 30 minutes out of every hour. So I'd walk around for about 30 minutes, then I'd go upstairs to the break room and read a book and eat donuts for 30 minutes. It was fantastic. Sadly, at the time, Nauticus was not making the best money, and they had to cut costs. And because I was not really essential, I was kind of an experiment, I had to go. But for that 1 month, it was a lot of fun, and a lot of great memories there for that month. But in the meantime, while I'm hanging out, I went ahead and bought myself a book, The Night Circus by Aaron Morgenstern. Oh, about to start boarding. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then I'm going to sit down and read my book. Okay, so we're on the boat, and like I said, it's a beautiful day. The sun is out, is shining. It's really, really bright today. I've even taken my jacket off because it's just so nice out here. Once we start moving, I'll probably put the jacket back on. But for right now, it's just gorgeous out here today. So very much looking forward to this trip. We're going to be going all up and down this river. Here, I'll point some down here real quick. Right over there is Portsmouth Naval Hospital. That's where I was born. Yep. Back in the dark ages, otherwise known as the early 1970s.
It's still in use, combined with the ability to making up the largest military medical installation in the world, and then as a Naval Regional Medical Center, Portsmouth, Virginia. Small bay to our right is called Crawford Bay, named for Colonel William Crawford, who established the town of Portsmouth in 1752. Crawford Bay at that time was also used as an anchoring ground for many of the smaller ships of those days. And as a result of this, a lot of Portsmouth seemed to develop in and around the Crawford area. In fact, the section of the city you write is called Old Town. A lot of the homes you write dating back to the mid-1700s, right through the late 1880s. Most of those homes have been restored to their original splendor. You would not find a finer collection of historic homes between Charleston, South Carolina, and Alexandria, Virginia. The city of Norfolk that lies to your left had these old homes at one time, but on the 1st of January 1776, Lord Dunmore, who was Virginia's last royal governor, had ordered part of the British fleet up the Elizabeth River. When they reached this point, they began to shell and burn some of those buildings along the Norfolk waterfront. That led to a chain of events in which practically the entire town of Norfolk was burned to the ground. A few buildings were left standing. One of them was St. Paul's Church. That building stands today as one of the attractions of the Norfolk tour. Fortunately, to your right, there was spared from that bombardment. The reason being, when Lord Dunmore had ordered the bombardment of Norfolk at that same time, he had based his headquarters in Portsmouth. To your right, and for that reason, Portsmouth was spared. The marina we're passing on our right is the Naval Yacht Agency, a full-service marina located at mile marker 0 along the Atlantic Intercoastal Waterway. And ahead of us, we'll soon be entering the southern branch of the Elizabeth, which marks the beginning of the Atlantic Intercoastal Waterway system heading south. It would mean if we were to continue in the direction ahead of us, we could go from here to Miami, Florida, without ever having to enter the Atlantic Ocean and solving rivers, canals, and sounds. What do you say we head for Miami this afternoon? It's only 1,094 statute miles. We'll be there in about 5.5 days. Also to your right and ahead of us, we'll find some of the redevelopment of downtown Portsmouth. The tall brown building off to your right is an apartment complex called Harbor Tower. The building to your right stands at 25 stories. Keep that building in mind. Later in the day's tour at the Naval Base, I'll be pointing out to you one of the Navy's super aircraft carriers. Tremendous ships in size, from the bottom of their keels to the tops of their masts, the equivalent of a 24-story building, about the height of the building to your right. If you need to carry it later, the building will be a great comparison just for the size of that ship. Just past the apartment building to your right is a blue, white, and black paddle boat. That's one of the Elizabeth River ferries. They're used to shuttle pedestrians back and forth between Norfolk and Portsmouth. Ferries depart from the Norfolk side of the river, the quarter and three-quarter hour, from the Portsmouth side on the hour and half hour. Ferry to our right will be departing from these docks in a couple minutes. It'll be bound for Norfolk. In fact, we'll see the ferry on the Norfolk waterfront or waterside a little later in the day's tour. Further down the waterfront to your right, the gray building is the Renaissance Hotel, Resort, and Convention Center. It's located right in the heart of Old Town Portsmouth. Let's now direct your attention much further ahead of us, looking up the southern branch of the Elizabeth. In the distance ahead of us and along that right shoreline, about a mile upriver on the right shore, there's a huge light green colored crane. The crane is a 350-ton hammerhead crane. It marks about the beginning of the Norfolk Naval Shipyard. Even though it's called the Norfolk Naval Shipyard, it's actually located within the city of Portsmouth, Virginia. It's also our nation's oldest shipyard, started in 1767, before the Revolutionary War, as a private shipyard under the British flag. At that time, it was called Gosford Yard. The shipyard over to your right is very historic. That shipyard built the world's first ironclad warship, converted from a wooden frigate, originally named the USS Merrimack, but after the conversion was renamed the CSS of the Confederate States ship Virginia. The dry dock where that conversion took place is still in use today. That shipyard also built our Navy's first battleship, the USS Texas, commissioned in 1896. Navy's first aircraft carrier built here, the USS Langley. Langley was constructed on the hull of a coal collier. Langley carried 18 airplanes and commissioned in 1922. They no longer do ship construction for the RTOI, but they do up there now. They do major overhauls to the Navy's supercarriers, and they also overhaul and refuel the Navy's nuclear-powered submarines. Now closer to us, looking directly ahead of us, a private shipyard operated by a company called BAE Systems. The shipyard performing mainly government contract work. Located ahead of us and on the left side of their first pier today, you'll find one of the largest floating dry docks in the United States. The dry dock ahead of us is named Titan. It was constructed in Brazil just over 40 years ago at the cost of $14.9 million. A very large U.S. warship at the dry dock to your right this afternoon, which is LHD number 1, which is named the USS Wasp. The Wasp is a Wasp-class landing helicopter dock ship. Lead ship of the class built, therefore the class of ship was named for her. She entered the dry dock around 4 months ago to begin some bottom repair work. And briefly to explain to you how they put a ship like this in the dry dock, the first thing that they do is start up with a dry docking plan for the Wasp. That plan enabled them to land on the floor bottom of the dry dock. And once the keel blocks are laid out, then they will sink that dry dock down, flooding tanks and the side of the drawdock along with the floor bottom section. When those tanks are flooded, the drawdock would sink and allow them to run the Wasp inside. But once the ship's in the drawdock, it's just a matter of aligning the ship up over the keel blocks. When the alignments are correct, then they can pump the water out of the tanks. The drawdock becomes buoyant, rising to the surface with the ship inside. Tying drawdock to your right is 950 foot long, 160 foot across. It has a lifting capability of 55,250 long tons. It can and will accommodate any ship in the United States Navy with the exception of the Navy's super aircraft carriers. Raid ships of the Wasp class that were constructed, and later in the day's tour, the naval base will be pointing out three of them to you, three others like the Wasp. They are the USS Kearsarge, Uss Bataan, and also USS Iwo Jima. And with the other three out a little later this afternoon, we'll be going into really good detail about these large assault ships and explain to you exactly how they work. A little later today, we'll see actually three other ships of this same class in the base, the USS San Antonio, the USS Mesa Verde, and also the USS Arlington. And with the other three out to you later, we'll be going into more detail about these large assault ships as well. Here's an interesting story about the U.S. New York to your right. This ship was named in honor of New York City. The Navy built her at Ingalls Shipyard down in Pascagoula, Mississippi. Construction began on the USS New York in 2011. Prior to building the ship, the Navy had acquired a lot of the damaged steel from the World Trade Center after the attack had taken place on 9/11. Construction began on the USS New York, where at least 1,700 tons of steel from the World Trade Center was recycled and incorporated in construction of the Battle of the USS New York. Again, to your right, an assault ship called an LPD, a landing platform bound the USS New York. It's been in the yard for nearly 4 months and been repair work. We continue to move up past the USS New York. Look to your right in a few minutes, you'll find the Berkeley Bridge coming into view. That bridge is also part of the bridge tunneling between Norfolk and Portsmouth. The Berkeley Bridge to our right would span the eastern branch of the Elizabeth River. The tunnel goes on the southern branch of the Elizabeth, which is located behind us. But to the left of that bridge and ahead of us, we're also going to find some of the redevelopment of downtown Norfolk. The tallest building in Norfolk waterfront to right is the Bank of America building, which stands at 27 stories. Also ahead of us on the right, the Waterside Sheraton Hotel. This building located directly ahead of us with a gray roof is Waterside, a festival marketplace that was initially built here in the early 1980s. Several years ago, the city of Norfolk closed that building down. It sat vacant for a number of years. And around three and a half years ago, renovation began on Waterside with a company known as the Cornish Corporation, a company specializing in revitalizing large projects that went to your right. Began with a partial demo of the building and since added additional restaurants and stores. Waterside officially reopened about a year and a half ago as a Waterside district. Once again, a very nice entertainment facility with lots of eateries. And to our right, the ferry boat we saw on the Portsmouth waterfront a few moments ago is where they landed over to your right on Waterside. And they depart from this side of the river the quarter and three-quarter hour, and from the Portsmouth side on the hour and a half hour. The price for riding the ferry is $2 per person each way, back and forth across the river. And also to our right is the Waterside Municipal Marina. Engaged in some type of rural trade. The grass area is Norfolk's Town Point Park. This park is used extensively by the city during the warmer months of the year. Many types of activities, festivals, and concerts are held here. Most of them are free and open to the public. Beyond the park to your right, this little large gray building to our right is Nauticus, the National Maritime Center, currently entering its 26th year of operation. A $52 million maritime museum that offers a variety of interactive exhibits, hosting traveling exhibits, home to the Hampton Roads Naval Museum, and also home to Battleship Uss Wisconsin. We're going to get a great view of here in just a couple minutes. In the meantime, one of the other newer additions to the Norfolk waterfront is coming from the right ahead of us, that being the Harpoon Cruise and Celebration Center. And this is a unique building. It's a combination cruise ship terminal and convention center, which went into operation just about 11 years ago. Norfolk's been hosting cruise ships for a number of years. With the opening of the terminal, it's really enhanced the city's ability to accommodate cruise ships more efficiently. Ships are Carnival Cruise Lines, Holland America, Norwegian Cruise Lines, Costa Lines, Princess Lines, and many others have all had ships calling here. Most of these cruise ships would sail south on Norfolk during the warmer months of the year. Most are offering 7 and 10 night cruises down to the eastern and western parts of the Caribbean. The cruise ship industry has actually been out of operation here for nearly 2 years now because of COVID-19. That's supposed to change late spring, early summer. The first of the large cruise ships companies returning to Norfolk will be those from Norwegian Cruise Lines. Still occasionally have some small cruise ships calling here, and just ahead of us right is the American Constitution, owned by a company known as American Cruise Lines. And this is kind of a unique company because they do cruises that the big ships do not call upon. You're doing 2 cruises up and down the Chesapeake Bay. As the weather starts cooling off a bit more, they'll be moving south down to Charleston, Beaufort, South Carolina, in Savannah, Georgia, areas like that, and sometimes in the winter months you're down in the Virgin Islands. So they carry probably about 130 or so passengers based on double occupancy, and again they do coastal cruises. So she's making a brief stop here in Norfolk, stopping for a lot of their passengers to get off the boat and do some tourist attractions here, maybe going up to Williamsburg and Yorktown and places like that. If you keep looking to your right, in a few moments coming into view on the other side of the American Constitution, we'll be looking at a very impressive U.S. warship. The ship I'm about to point out to you this afternoon, one of 4 Iowa-class battleships. They were in fact the largest battleships ever built, with the exception of 2 constructed by the Japanese during the Second World War. First of the Iowa-class ships built was BB-61. That was the USS Iowa. BB-62 was USS New Jersey. BB-63, the USS Missouri. To your right, the 4th and last of the class constructed to your right is BB-64, the battleship USS Wisconsin. This ship was built in the Philadelphia Naval Shipyard and commissioned on the 16th of April, 1944. All 4 of the Iowa-class ships saw action during the Second World War, including the Wisconsin, which won 5 battle stars for engagements against the Japanese. But they were large and were very expensive ships to operate. When the war was over, the Iowa-class ships were all decommissioned. They were later recommissioned during the Korean War, and then they were decommissioned. The battleship New Jersey even activated a very brief period of time during the Vietnam War, but shortly after that decommission. It wasn't until the Reagan administration and the tremendous buildup of the U.S. Armed Services that the Iowa-class ships were once again brought back into operation. Wisconsin was the last of the 40 into service. Navy recommissioned the ship in 1986, but right before the Navy spent $470 million to activate that ship. A lot of the money went to modernize the Wisconsin. After all, that's a World War II era battleship. A lot of the money went to new weapon systems when they left aboard. Most of the ship's original weaponry, but adding to the Wisconsin the capability of launching guided missiles. Upon her superstructure, there are 8 armor-plated boxes, 4 on either side. Those 8 boxes combined contain 32 Tomahawk cruise missiles. Tomahawk is the most accurate long-range missile in the U.S. arsenal. They may be tipped with a tactical nuclear warhead with a range of 900 miles or conventionally armed the range of 700 miles. Either way, the missile has pinpoint accuracy. Also outfitted with 16 canisters designed to carry 16 of our Navy's anti-ship missiles called Harpoon. Harpoon is a low-flying sea-speed missile that is designed to cruise only 15 to 20 feet above the surface of the water, which makes it almost impossible for an enemy ship to detect on radar until it is right upon them. For that reason, Harpoon has a better than 95% kill rate. The missile has a range of 80 nautical miles, delivering to its target a high explosive warhead with armor-piercing capability. Also outfitted with 4 Vulcan phalanx close-in weapons. I'll tell you more about Vulcan phalanx and some of the ships in the base later today. As you may have guessed, what the Navy left aboard the Iowa-class ships when recommissioned, the big guns. Predominantly large guns you find aboard the Wisconsin, in fact, the largest guns ever deployed on a U.S. warship. These are 16-inch 50 caliber guns. The Wisconsin carries 9 of them on board. There are 3 guns situated to a turret. Looking to your right, I get a good view of the aft turret of the ship. The 2 of the turrets identical to that it is forward of the ship's main structure. The barrels on those guns are just under 67 foot in length. Each one of those barrels weigh 94 tons. Those guns have the ability of firing a 2,700-pound projectile. That's more than the weight of a Volkswagen Beetle, 23 miles to a target with great accuracy. Smaller guns up on the side superstructure the ship are 5-inch 38 calibers. They have an effective range of 10 miles. The ship carries 12 of the 5-inch 38s. The Iowa-class ships came back online in the 80s. They did so with an awesome array of firepower. Next to the carrier we'll see today. Next to the carrier, the Wisconsin is the largest warship on the tour with a battle load that's a 58,000-ton ship, 887 foot in length, 108 foot across her beam. You find it interesting the Navy had actually built the Iowa-class ships to those specifications. They would just barely permit a ship like that to transit the locks in the Panama Canal. These ships were commissioned back in the 40s. At that time, the locks in the Panama Canal were 1,000 foot long by 110 foot wide. This ship is 887 by 108, so there's no problem transiting the locks lengthwise, but widthwise. An Iowa-class ship like that moves to the locks in the Panama Canal. They'd have only a foot of clearance on either side. At this point in time, all 4 of the Iowa-class ships have again been decommissioned. They're very large and very expensive ships to operate. Wisconsin arrived at Nauticus about 16 years ago. The ship is open to the public for tour as part of the paid admission to Nauticus, the National Maritime Center. Last conflict the ship was involved in was in Operation Desert Storm back in the early 90s when Iraq invaded Kuwait. When our Navy first put the Iowa-class ships to sea in the 40s, the ship might be able to carry a crew of nearly 3,000, even after being modernized in the 80s, still carrying a crew of around 1,600. And that is a fast ship, even by today's standards. She, of course, is conventionally powered. The Norfolk Wisconsin array boilers designed to generate steam, turning 4 steam turbines on that ship that combined will generate 212,000 shaft horsepower. That's a 43-mile-an-hour warship. What's rather amazing about that, the technology. The Williams ship dates back to the late 1930s. Certainly for the downtown Norfolk area, if a few hours of time to spare, it's worthy of one of the tour of the Wisconsin, as well as the Nauticus Museum. Just ahead of us, we'll find a couple of condominiums. These condos just off to your right of the Pier One condos were built about the same time the Battleship Uss Norfolk around 16 years ago. Also looking to your right on the other side of the Pier One condos are the Freemason Harbor condominiums. A waterfront warehouse that just over 30 years ago was converted to nice waterfront condos. Located even further inshore to the right is a complex of white buildings with blue trim, making up the headquarters of the Atlantic Marine Center, which is part of NOAA. NOAA is the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. That facility, they map and chart the bottoms of oceans, harbors, rivers, bays, and sounds. The term, the charts are used by ship and boat captains almost the same as a motorist would use a road map. The small white ship of the NOAA docks to your right is the Ferdinand Hessler, which is used by NOAA in coastal geodetics survey work, in other words, for mapping and charting. Past the NOAA base, a small bridge to our right is the Brambleton Avenue Bridge. On the other side of the Brambleton Bridge, a very nice section of Norfolk called Git. A lot of nice old homes in that area. Most were built towards the latter part of the 1800s. And look to the left of the Brambleton Bridge, and to your right is a small 4-story white office building with dark windows. That building several years ago became the international headquarters for PETA, which is people for the ethical treatment of animals. And closer to us on our right, the gray building in the corner being the Pier condominiums. That used to be an old cotton storage warehouse, initially built here in the early 1920s, and many years ago converted to nice waterfront condos. Past the Pier condos, new construction work to your right, and these set of apartment complexes being built here along the Norfolk waterfront. Picking up the speed a little bit, for those of you on the outer decks of the boat, if you wear any type of hats or headgear, make sure they are securely fastened to the tops of your head. If you lose a hat today, it's not a big deal. We have some nice ones for sale in the ship's store. That's against the British invasion, which did take place in that conflict. The invasion of this region came in the year of 1813, at which time the British had sailed part of their fleet of
There's Port Norfolk.
British approached the mouth of the Elizabeth River.
Looked good for 30 years. I never knew about that place.
Forces at Quincy Island, which lies in the distance ahead of us. The Americans defeated the British at Quincy Island. They failed to fall back to arrive with the news of Norfolk's secondary line of defense. But in the War of 1812, the British never made it this far up the Elizabeth River. But after the British were defeated at Quincy Island, they sailed back out of Hampton Roads. On their way out, they shelled and burned the city of Hampton, Virginia. And then with additional reinforcements, the British turned north up the Chesapeake Bay and invaded Washington, D.C. during the War of 1812. Next on our right, just ahead of us, James Miles and Company. They've been operating that site for around about 120 years. For many years, especially in James Miles, they were the major suppliers to Campbell's Soup Company for Campbell's lamb chowder and Campbell's oyster stew. James Miles shut the plant down to your right just over 5 years ago. Yeah, that moved most of the operations up in the state of New Jersey, but they initially opened business back in 1901 with James Miles and Company. Further ahead of us here, right, another private shipyard. This next one coming up is operated by a company called Marine Hydraulics International. This shipyard performed mainly government contract work, and they only do top and sub repairs in the shipyard. No hydraulic facilities here. They're currently working on 4 U.S. warships here today. On this side of the pier, all the way inshore, the right, the larger ship with the white canvas strip down the side of the ship is Hull 51, which is named the USS Oak Hill. The Oak Hill is a Woodley Island class LSD or landing ship dock. An assault ship designed to land the Marines and equipment to a hostile beach. Covers by landing craft and harbor craft. The ship will carry a side and interior well deck and fly a variety of aircraft may operate the and flight deck of the Oak Hill. She's 609 foot long, 84 foot across the beam, a crew of 340, and accommodates about 400 Marines. I think we're going to go into detail a little about assault ships out of the base a little later this afternoon. Now, directly on the other side of the pier for the Oak Hill is a warship bearing the hull number 58 on her bow. We're going to find 2 number 58s on this pier. Ship on the other side of the pier of the Oak Hill, number 58 is the USS Philippine Sea. That is a Ticonderoga or Aegis class guided missile cruiser. The number 58 coming up on the right is the USS Lagoon, which is an Arleigh Burke class guided missile destroyer. 2 ships in the fleet can have the same hull number, but they would never be of the same classification. Boat number 58 to your right. One is a cruiser of the Taekwondo class. The other one, a guided missile destroyer of the Arleigh class, have something in common. Both ships have been equipped with the world's most advanced naval weapon system known as Aegis. Later in the base, we'll be looking at several ships of both these classes. We'll go into great detail about the Aegis-equipped ships of the base a little later this afternoon. We'll find one more ship on this pier on the opposite from the pier from the lagoon. On the other side of number 58 is number 72. It's another Arleigh class guided missile destroyer light lagoon. That one to right is named the Uss Bataan. By the way, there are 71 ships of this class currently in operation. They make up the largest percentage of surface ships now serving the United States Navy. And they're equipped with the world's most advanced naval weapon system, known as Aegis. Again, we'll see ships of the same type on the base a little later this afternoon. We'll really go into great detail on that time. Piers on our right are called the Lambert's Point Docks. These docks are on the Norfolk Southern Railway. They're operated from Norfolk Southern and Lambert's Point Docks Incorporated. They're older general merchandising piers. Export up these piers a lot of heavy equipment and machinery, including railroad locomotives. Imported here, crude rubber, plywood, and paper products that are coming in primarily from South America. At the present time, quite a bit of the dock space here right is being occupied by government ships. We'll find just ahead of us here right two large gray ships. Those are both United States naval ships that both carry the classification of the large, medium-speed roll-on, roll-off ships. These are ships that may be activated during an emergency in time of war to supplement primarily the arming, moving, and transporting mechanized equipment. And when the ships here right are activated, more than likely they're used to assist the Army in moving that equipment. And they're crewed for the Navy by the MSC or Military Sealift Command, a civilian group very similar to the American Merchant Marine. Most ships have these piers in a 5 to 10 day operational status. Beyond the two naval vessels, we'll find three black-hulled ships on this next pier, two on the side of the last pier, one on the opposite side. The black-hulled ships here are called MPS, or military pre-positioning ships. The 13 ships of this type that are all owned by General Dynamics, and in turn, General Dynamics leases those 13 ships to the United States Navy. And when the ships are activated, they're crewed for the Navy by the MSC, or Military Sealift Command. Again, a civilian group similar to the American Merchant Marine. Now, at any given time, you'd find 9 of those 13 ships stationed in ports around the world very close to troubled areas where tensions are known to exist. In the event, the U.S. Marines will summon and form an assault ships like these to right and follow the Marines in after the initial assault takes place to back the Marines with the materials and supplies that they may need. These ships do not operate independently, but they operate in squadrons that consist of 3 ships. A combination of cargoes between the ships is enough to supply an entire division of Marines, 30,000 men for 30 days at any given time. The 9 ships like this are all stationed ready to go at a moment's notice. All 13 ships of this type are named for Marine heroes on the Medal of Honor winners during the Vietnam War. You see the names on the ships as we pass by. And we keep a squadron of these ships on board a little tiny island called Diego Garcia, which is located right at the mouth of the Persian Gulf. We have 2 other squadrons that are stationed in the Pacific, one in Guam and the other in Guadalcanal. Let's now direct your attention to the left here on the other side of the river, a container facility, one of 3 world shipping in recent history. In 2009, Maersk reported losing over $1 billion. The state of Virginia got that news. Virginia Port Authority approached Maersk. They asked them to be interested in leasing the facility. That took place about 11 years ago. Virginia Port Authority it's cheaper, faster, it's a lot more efficient than the older methods and concepts in which cargo was handled. Main difference, several items of general type cargo stored into a large metal container. That's actually done long before the ship even arrives in port. When the ship does arrive, all they need to do is start loading these container boxes on and off the ship. It saves a lot of time and handling costs, as each individual item of cargo would have to be loaded on or off the ship separately. Containers come in 3 standard sizes of 20, 40, and 45 foot. On the dock to your right, on the deck of the 3 ships, you will find a lot of containers. They save warehousing space. They can be stored outside as they are now. They're completely weathertight. It eliminates practically all pilferage. Containers can be locked. They're also very easy to transport across land. Containers can be loaded directly on board flatbed railroad cars or flatbed tractor trailer trucks. They can put wheels under a container to make them part of a tractor trailer rig. Currently servicing 3 container ships in the berth to our right. The black hull vessel directly to right is owned by Hapag-Lloyd. Hapag-Lloyd is a German shipping company. That ship is named the Potomac Express. That is a standard Panamax container ship. A ship of that size will be able to pass through the original Panama Canal before the expansion took place just over 3 years ago. Second ship to your right is owned by a company known as Hyundai Container Lines. Hyundai ship to your right, as you probably have guessed, is one of those ultra-large or post-Panamax container ships, and that is the Hyundai Respect. Again, when fully loaded, that ship would handle probably around 13,000 20-foot units of containerized cargo. Third ship ahead of us to your right, we'll try and get a name of that one in just a moment. The third ship is named the
Rudder of Fortune. I do not recognize the emblem on the second that ship, but there's another one of the standard Panamax ships like the Haypack Lloyd ship back to your right. Cranes on that dock to your right are Suez Canal class cranes. They're just like the cranes that's on behind us, the ABM terminal. These cranes to your right were all constructed in Shanghai, China. The 10 of them on that dock. They were fully assembled in Shanghai and loaded aboard the deck of a heavy lift ship. Transported from Shanghai to Norfolk to your right, where these cranes were offloaded. They were built and delivered at the cost of around $7 billion per crane. Designed and built to accommodate ships even larger than the Hyundai ship to your right, which is a post-Panamax ship. These cranes are called Suez Canal class cranes, designed to accommodate ships even larger in size. For example, the Hyundai ship to your right is probably around 1,200 foot long. The Suez Canal class ships are much bigger. They're about 12 to 1,600 foot in length, beams of 180 foot across, and when those ships are fully loaded, handling in excess of about 20,000 20-foot units of containerized cargo. The great news with the Port of Virginia is now that these trains here right are on our docks here at the Port of Virginia, we can accommodate and load and offload the largest container ships in the world, which again are the Suez Canal class ships. Company right at one time were part of a U.S. Army base. The Army used those piers as a point of debarkation for thousands of U.S. troops bound to the European theater of operations during the Second World War. The state of Virginia managed to obtain this property from the federal government back in the 50s. Developing them, had eventually left on the other side of Hampton Roads. Follow the trestle out at Hampton Roads. If you can follow and locate the trestle, that trestle to our left ends at a man-made island. Now, on the end of the island, you can make out also what looks like a fairly large yellowish colored building. That is a ventilation building for the tunnel. The right of the island to our left is a very large opening, which is the entrance to the James River. The opening is also where the tunnel transits under Hampton Roads and comes back up again on the Newport News side. Name of the bridge tunnel to our left is the Monterey Merrimack Memorial Bridge Tunnel, appropriately named the body of water that we're now on Hampton Roads as a site of a famous Civil War duel that took place between two ironclad warships, the Monitor and the Merrimack. Most of you probably know the Confederate ship better as the Merrimack, but the Merrimack was a Union warship that was abandoned by federal forces on the Gaspard Yard in Portsmouth, Virginia. At the beginning of our tour this afternoon, we pointed out to you the location of the Gaspard Yard up on the southern branch of the Elizabeth River. When the Civil War had initially broke out, that shipyard was occupied by federal forces. During the conflict, those federal forces had to vacate the Gaspard Yard on their way out. That set the shipyard on fire, and the U.S. warships they had left in that yard, including the USS Merrimack, was set afire and burnt to the water lines. Several days after that had taken place, the Confederacy moved in. When they moved in, they did a thorough inspection of the hull of the Merrimack. Despite the fact it had been burnt to the water line, they found the hull to be in very good condition. So they moved the Merrimack, or at least what was left over, to a dry dock that began converting her into an ironclad ship. After the recommissioning, it was recommissioned as the CSS of the Confederate States ship Virginia. The battle between those two ironclad ships, the Union ship Monitor, built up in New York, and the Confederate ship Virginia, built in Portsmouth, Virginia. Those two ironclad ships met at Hampton Roads in the distant shore left on the morning of March 9, 1862. The battle between the ships lasted longer than 4 hours, till the crews of both ships were exhausted and the guns were too hot to fire. As neither of those ships could destroy the other, the battle had no effect on the outcome of the Civil War, had a significant impact on naval architecture. It brought an end to construction of wooden warships and ushering in a new age of iron and steel and ship construction. And to our left, this is some more dredging equipment. They would hook up a pipeline, and there's a conveyor system on there that's used to dump these spoils into what they call a spoils handling barge. And the barge can be let up dredge the spoils, and the tugboat will pull that barge off to what they call the spoils. The spoils are area for rehandling or getting rid of the spoils. So they're bound out in the Atlantic Ocean. And out of the first warehouse here, right, we'll find another one of the large Navy medium-speed roll-on, roll-off ships. We saw two of the same type later, or I should say early in the trip today. And these are ships, again, that can be activated during emergency and time of war to supplement probably the Army moving and transporting mechanized equipment. On the opposite side of the pier, you'll see a ship coming in with the red, white, and blue bandings around the stack. That ship is named the Wright. The Wright is an older general-type cargo ship, at one time owned by probably Prudential Grace Lines. Many American companies have defaulted. As those companies were going out of business, the federal government basically took those ships over and maintained them to reduce operational status. So we need a merchant marine to help move military hardware, so that's why the Navy have recently acquired a lot of ships from defaulted companies, and that ship to the right would be one of those ships, and generally laid up in a reduced operational status where she can be activated during an emergency and time of war. 4 years ago, Naval Station Norfolk celebrating its 100th birthday in Norfolk. The base was built on a point of land known as Sewell's Point. Present day, it occupies about 3,400 acres, which also makes it the largest military base in the world. Currently home to just under 90 warships and almost 100,000 men and women that call Norfolk their home port. Head to your right, the piers we're looking at are called the VNS, or the destroyer and submarine piers. The piers in the base are also numerically numbered. For example, the first pier coming up to the right today is Pier One. We're going to find several ships on Pier One to our right today. Large ship on this side of Pier One with the light blue and gold bandings around the stack and 2 bright orange colored light boats is the Kaiser class oiler. And ship to our right is the USS John Lenthal. Soon after USS Joshua Humphreys. The Humphreys is identical to the Leeward Grumman we saw earlier at the fuel depot. Again, these are Kaiser class oilers. Directly ahead of the oiler, we'll find a U.S. warship, stern aft in facing in the direction of this whole 68. That ship is named the USS Anzio. And that is the Ticonderoga class cruiser. We'll go into greater detail about cruises here in just a few moments. We'll get a much better view of some. Ship on the other side of the pier is one that many of you might be familiar with. That's the white ship, and she'll have some large red crosses painted on her. That is the United States Naval Hospital Ship Comfort. Our Navy operator maintained 2 hospital ships. Comfort, your right home port here in Norfolk, Virginia. The Comfort has a sister ship named Mercy, home port out on the west coast out of San Diego, California. Now, initially, the Comfort to your right and her sister ship Mercy, one time, they were both San Clemente class commercial oil tankers. One time, they were actually used to carry crude oil from Alaska down to California. Back in the 70s, the Navy acquired both the tankers, and they converted both Comfort and Mercy into 1,000-bed hospital ships. Aboard the Comfort, the 12 operating rooms. All the modern amenities you would find in any modern hospital, you also found aboard our hospital ships like the Comfort and Mercy. Ordinarily, ships like this are laid up in a reduced operational status, but may be activated during an emergency in time of war. Many of you probably recall just over a year ago, the Comfort was activated and sent to New York Harbor to assist with the COVID-19 crisis taking place in New York. She arrived in New York on or about the first part of May, just over a year ago, and was sent to do COVID work. But once they arrived there, they also at that same time had opened the Javits Center. So this ship didn't do any COVID work. They did lots of other medical procedures, and the Javits Center did the COVID work. She was only in New York for about a month before returning to Norfolk. When the Navy activated a ship like the Comfort, this ship is crewed for the Navy by the MSC, or Military Sealift Command. Notice the light blue and gold bandings around the stack denoting that. A very automated ship requiring a crew of only 71 for actual operation. As far as staffing the ship with medical personnel, when the Navy activated the Comfort for this ship, they'd pull a lot of the staff from the Naval Regional Medical Center in Portsmouth. We passed by earlier, and fully staffed the Comfort would accommodate roughly 1,200 medical personnel aboard. A very large ship, she's 896 foot long, 104 foot across the beam, and Comfort sets to these piers again in a reduced operational status. One of 2 hospital ships owned and operated by the United States Navy. Let's now look at Pier 2 to the right. We're going to find 4 of the United States Navy's Aegis-equipped ships on Pier 2. And 3 of the 4 are Ticonderoga-class cruisers. The one of those are Arleigh Burke. Let's point the cruisers out to you first. Number 61 to the right is named the Uss Monterey. Behind her is number 72, the Uss Bellegoff. And on the other side of the pier from the Bellegoff is hull 66, named the Uss Way City. Those ships are, again, Ticonderoga-class cruisers. They were the first ships in the United States Navy to come online with a fast-action digital computer defense system known as Aegis. Navy survival on their ships in the mid-80s to the 90s. 27 were built. 22 of the 27 remain in service today. 26 of the 27 built were named for famous battles like the ships to your right, named for the Battle of Monterey, the Battle of Way City, and also the Battle of Bellegoff. We have another class of ship we'll see at the base today equipped with the Aegis system, and those are ships of the Arleigh Burke class. Look on the opposite side of the pier, you'll find a vessel coming to view, bow facing out. Hull number 95 is Uss James Williams, and that is an Arleigh Burke class guided missile destroyer. So we're looking at the 2 classes of ships we'll see at the base today equipped with the Aegis system. We'll begin by telling you that the word Aegis is a Greek word that means shield. The shield referred to on these ships here right as a superior air defense system. The primary function of all of the Aegis-equipped ship escort and defend the battle group from airstrike. Reversible, these ships here, they can strike land-based targets from hundreds of miles away. They can engage and destroy enemy surface ships and submarines, but they specialize primarily in air defense. At the heart of the Aegis system, the ships here carry on board a new type of radar. If you look on the upper structure of these ships, you'll find on their upper structure what look like some 8-sided or octagon-shaped plates. For the most part, you'll find these plates are shaped like stop signs, and they're slightly lighter gray in color than the surrounding area. Located in any of those 8-sided plates on the ships, located at the heart of the Aegis system. Because SPY-1 is a fixed or a stationary radar system, the ships here will carry 4 of them aboard. Those radars are situated so limit signals in a 360-degree radius completely around the ship. bombing allowed the ships to track over 1,000 targets at the same time. While tracking all these targets, they can keep tabs on friendly aircraft and friendly ships operating within their vicinity. At the same time, they can also determine those targets that are considered to be hostile. Once a target has been verified as hostile, Aegis has the ability of selecting an appropriate weapon and launching that weapon to engage and to destroy the threat. The entire process from start to finish takes only fractions of a second, which is really amazing. Ships are heavily armed. They all carry on board fully automated 5-inch gun mounts. We'll see a 5-inch 62 up on the barrel of the number 95. That's a gun carried on the newer ships of the Early Bird class. The gun has an effective range of 18 miles. The mount will pump out 20 rounds per minute. The weight of the 5-inch projectile is roughly 70 pounds. The other ships that we'll see to the right carry a 5-inch gun. It's called a 5-inch 54, which has an effective range of about 13.5 miles. They also carry on board these ships close-in weapons called Vulcan failings. We'll tell you more about in a few minutes. Let's talk about missile systems on these ships. They do carry on board an array of missiles on these ships, and most of their weaponry is launched through what's called a VLS, a vertical launch system. Simply put, missiles are launch in vertical cells located below the ship's main deck. The cruiser like number 61, the Monterey, to your right, between two VLS launchers on that ship, one launch on her bow and a launch on her stern. Monterey carries up to 122 missiles situated in vertical launch. A destroyer like number 95, the James Williams, the smallest ship in size, carries up to 96 missiles of her VLS, or vertical launch systems. Now, the advantage to having missiles launched through VLS, a lot of the ships get right to rapid offload of many types of missiles at the same time, enabling those ships to engage and to destroy many different targets at once. Will greatly increase their survivability as well as their capability to defend the ships within a surrounding battle group. Most important weapon deployed from an Aegis-equipped ship is the SM-2 Block 3 standard surface two-air missile, allowing the ships to engage and destroy high-performance aircraft or incoming missiles about 70 miles out. Select ships of both classes may also carry on board the extended-range version of that missile, giving the ships the ability to engage and to destroy a short and intermediate-range ballistic missile in its initial takeoff. Not all the ships have that capability, but several of them do. It's part of the United States Navy's anti-ballistic missile defense program. They also carry aboard these ships a long-range land attack missile called Tomahawk that allow them to strike land-based targets from hundreds of miles away. They can engage the enemy's surface ship well over the horizon, that low-flying sea-screaming missile called Harpoon. They have excellent anti-submarine warfare capabilities aboard these ships that carry what is called the Mark 46 torpedo. This Mark 46 is a heavyweight wire-guided torpedo and has an effective range probably around maybe 14 miles. And these ships can also be launched from their aft decks. Helicopters with a system in detecting, locating, and destroying the enemy's submarine. These are very versatile ships here, but they specialize primarily in air defense. The cruisers like the Monterey are 566 foot long, 55 foot across the beam with a crew of 375. Early Burke's like number 95, a little smaller in size, and ship is 509 foot long. She is 59 foot across her beam with a crew right around 366. So on either side of the pier to the right, a good chance of either the class of the ships will see the base today equipped with a fast action digital computer defense system known as Aegis. Next pier ahead of us to your right is Pier 3, and Pier 3 is often referred to as the submarine pier. In Norfolk, Virginia, we have only fast attack submarines on board. The Navy's larger subs that carry ballistic missiles are stationed to the south of us, down in Kings Bay, Georgia. Only attack subs in Norfolk. We're going to see two subs here on Pier 3 to the right. Both of them are located on the side of Pier 3. The top subs are painted totally black in color. Each submarine has one of those oil containment balloons stretched around the exterior of the submarine. Our submarine closest to us, midway down on the pier, is a 688 Los Angeles class attack sub. They're not the newest in the fleet, but considered super high speed, super quiet, and deep diving. That submarine is 360 foot long, 33 feet across the beam with a crew right around 133. Submarine located behind her all the way inshore, the base of the pier is a little different. That is one of the Navy's new Virginia-class attack subs. Definitely one of the newest and finest to be added to the U.S. fleet. Considered certainly super high speed, super quiet, and deep diving. She's a bit larger in size. That sub is 377 foot long, also 32 feet across the beam with a crew of 126. Both submarines to your right are powered by one nuclear reactor. The core and the reactor plants will power them for approximately 15 to 20 years between refuelings, equivalent to a distance of over 1 million miles in steaming time. They have a speed on the surface of 20 knots, dive 30 knots plus. Bomb speed is classified information, if you did not know, and that is equal to about 1 1/8 of a mile an hour. As attack submarines, the primary function of the attack sub is to engage and to destroy the enemy submarine. Those subs to your right, they were quite versatile. They do carry aboard that long-range land attack missile called Tomahawk that allowed them to strike land-based targets from hundreds of miles away. They can engage either the enemy surface ship or submarine utilizing the world's most advanced torpedo, It's called a Mark 48 torpedo, heavyweight, water guided. Effective range of 23 miles, will travel at speeds in excess of 70 miles an hour. The ability to track and chase the enemy submarine to depths of over 3,000 feet. Whether that torpedo is launched to engage an enemy subsurface ship, it will deliver a 650-pound high explosive warhead. Standard patrol time for the attack subs, right about 60 days. Some of that or all of that is under the water without ever coming to the surface. We're going to find more Aegis equipped ships on the next pier. Keep in mind the easiest way to identify an Aegis equipped ship is quite simple. Look at their upper structures. Locate one of those 8-sided or octagon-shaped plates with the Spy 1 radar. Very indication it's an Aegis equipped ship. On the side of the pier closest to us, stern or aft in facing in our directions, an Arleigh Burke class guided missile destroyer. Hull number 74 is the USS McFall. Head of the McFall is number 60, the USS Normandy, named for power plants on this type of mast system into the ship's actual construction. A couple of principles involved with the design. One is protect from the weather. A lot of the ship's sensor gathering equipment, radar systems, communication systems are the systems used for gathering information. When that equipment is protected from the weather, it doesn't have to be serviced and replaced nearly as often. Second feature in that design, dealing with stealthing technology or radar evasion. Notice the structures in the upper part of that ship are built in trolley at angles and sloping surfaces. When a radar signal strikes the surface of that type, the signal is deflected off at an angle rather than directly back to its sender. From a distance, that ship would not light up, but to be as big a target on radar as a ship that is all flat and square surfaces. San Antonio, if you like, is identical to the USS New York we saw earlier in the tour of the day. These ships are designed to land the Marines and equipment into a hostile beach by landing craft and hovercraft that carry inside the interior well deck by a variety of aircraft that may operate from the aft flight deck. She is 684 foot long, 105 foot across the beam, a very automated ship requiring crew 361 and accommodates up to 100 Marines. Next two ships in review to the right are identical. Number 7 directly to the right is the USS Iwo Jima. To our left, number 5, the USS Bataan. These are both classified as LHDs, or landing helicopter dock ships of the Wasp class. We pointed out to the first ship in the tour today was the Wasp, setting in a floating dry dock in the BA shipyard. There are 8 of the class were initially constructed, and as we mentioned earlier, they're considered the largest amphibious assault ships in the world. And the mission of these ships, just like the San Antonio we're talking about, is to land the Marines and equipment into a hostile beach during an amphibious assault. This will be accomplished by 2 modes of transportation. Let's concentrate on number 7 to the right, the Iwo Jima. The stern right aft into the ship's face in our direction. Notice on the stern of the ship is a big door. It's closed at this time. The door is called a stern gate. Beyond the gate on the interior of the ship is a huge area called a well deck, which they have the ability to flood with water. Once the well deck on that ship is flooded, it will cause the Iwo Jima to sink on her stern by an additional 12 to 13 feet, at which point they open that door on the ship's stern for flooding in and out landing craft and hovercraft. Ships also, to our right, will accommodate between 30 to 35 aircraft aboard, ranging from a variety of attack and transport helicopters. The craft they carry inside the ship are air cushioned vehicles and also landing craft. The air cushioned vehicles are called LCACs, and those LCACs have great advantages over the Navy's traditional landing craft. They're fast, they're very maneuverable. The great advantage the LCACs have, when they hit the beach, they can continue to glide on that cushion of air right over land. Theoretically, if the Marines ride them into the beaches, they won't even have to get their boots wet. Ships to your right are quite large in size. They're both the same size. Those ships with battle loads are 42,000 ton ships. They're the approximate size of an Essex-class World War II aircraft carrier. They're 844 foot long, 105 foot across their beam. They each carry a crew of 1,200. Each ship accommodates up to about 1,900 Marines. And you'll find this rather incredible aboard the 8 ships of the class, including these 2 on our right, extensive medical facilities aboard these ships. On board each ships are about 600-bed hospitals, a 21-bed trauma unit, a 21-bed intensive care unit, and 6 operating rooms. And not only great amphibious assault ships, but are also great humanitarian ships as well. There were 8 of the class in operation. The 8th and last class built, the USS Bonhomme Richard, kind of met with a bad ending, which we'll tell you about that in just a few minutes. The breadth of her flight deck is 252 feet. She is the equivalent of a 24-story building from the bottom of the ship's keel to the top of the mast. Structured on the flight deck of the George Bush is called the island. That's where most of the ship's operations are controlled. On the island of the Bush, she'll bear the hull number 77, believe she was the 77th consecutively planned aircraft carrier for the United States Navy. What's going to give you an idea or a concept of how big that ship is? The flight deck of the Bush here covers an area of 4.56 acres. On the flight deck of that carrier, they could have 4 football games going on at the same time, and they'd still have room for spectators. When fully loaded, about 39 feet of that ship is below the surface of the water. Channel depths in this harbor run between 50 to 55 foot deep. Ship to your right will carry aboard several million gallons of fuel. She refuels a lot of the fleet to go to sea with her, as well as all the aircraft that she carries. Technically, the ship to your right will carry between 100 to 110 tactical aircraft. More than likely, when the Bush deploys, she does so with around 80 to 85 aircraft, depending on the type and size you're using. The aircraft aboard the Bush are launched into the air by the use of steam-powered catapults at the speeds of up to 165 miles an hour. Very capable of launching the first aircraft in 1 minute and one about every 15 seconds thereafter. She carries 4 of the steam-powered catapults. Also, the ship is equipped with 4 flight elevators, as well on the side of the ship, and 1 and 3 located on the other side. Can't really get a good view of the elevators, but they're used to bring aircraft from the hangar deck to the flight deck. Can do so when aircraft about every 7 seconds. The 10 ships in the Nimitz class, including the one to your right, are nuclear powered. The ship on your right powered by 2 large nuclear reactors. The cores in the reactor plants on the Bush are expected to power the ship for at least 25 years or longer between refuelings, equivalent to a distance of over 1 million miles in steaming time. Reactors on that ship are designed to generate steam, and most of that steam is used to turn our 4 steam turbines that combined will generate up to 280,000 shaft horsepower. We find it hard to believe the ship to your right having a top speed of very close to 50 miles an hour. At least impossible to push anything that large to the air resistance that fast, much less with the water resistance. With the air on board, the Bush to your right carries a crew of 6,000. With a crew of 6,000, it means that aboard that ship, they're serving about 18,000 meals a day. How would you like to get stuck with washing those dishes? Better than that, would you like to pay for the grocery bill? I've got the use for you do. If you carry the grocery bill on the ship, Nora runs the U.S. taxpayer just over $1 million a month. She has a complete city within herself, carries practically everything aboard anyone could ever ask for. We used to say except women, but that's not true anymore. Roughly about 27 years ago, I think we started to assign women to warships to carry combat status. Here's like the Bush show, I have at least 500 or more women living and working aboard them, perform the same task and duties aboard the ship as their male counterparts. On that ship, you will find banks, barber shops, butcher shops, bakeries, shoe repair shops, a hospital, dental offices, operating rooms, a religious chapel. For the most part, the Bush is air-conditioned to offer the comfort of the crew. If that ship were to go to the West Coast, she'd have to sail around South America. She is much too wide and too long to pass through the Panama Canal. Built in Newport News, Virginia, she was the 10th and last of the Nimitz carriers constructed. Commissioned in 2009 and built at the cost of $6.3 billion. So if you will, look to your right this afternoon. What you are looking at is one of the largest and one of the mightiest warships in the world with a battle load. George Bush to your right is a 100,000 ton ship. You can always rephrase that as 100,000 tons of diplomacy. That being the city of Hampton, Virginia. There's a huge brick building on the Hampton shoreline, which is a Chamberlain Hotel that dominates All Point Comfort. Located behind and to the right of the Chamberlain Hotel, you would also find Fort Monroe. In the distance to our left is Newport News. Newport News is Newport News Shipbuilding, now a division of Huntington Ingalls. Years ago, known as Newport News Shipbuilding Drydock Corporation at one time, they were the largest shipbuilders in the world at one time, Virginia's largest employer, employing that yard about 34,000. Today, Huntington Ingalls employs about half that number. The busy in the yard, they just recently completed construction on a new class of supercarrier for our Navy, CVN 78, the USS Gerald R. Ford, commissioned just over 3 years ago. Put the Ford alongside the Nimitz carrier George Bush. It would look very similar. The Ford has lots and lots of new technologies aboard. It's things like electromagnetic catapult systems, and more advanced propulsion plan on the 4 class carriers. Not only that, the 4 class carriers have automation aboard them that allow them to carry roughly 1,500 fewer crew members than those in the Nimitz class. When the 4 class carrier puts to sea, they would do so with a crew of around 4,500. Price tags on the Nimitz class carriers, most of them ran about $5 billion apiece, with the exception of the George Bush, built at a cost of $6.3 billion. You can think that's expensive. Price tag on the Gerald 4 was a whopping $12.6 billion. The 2 more like her under construction in Newport News, Virginia. Next.
All right, well, that was it for the trip. I'm here with my dad. We're in the wheelhouse of the Victory River.
This is where all the magic happens. Keep the pointy end going that way.
And don't hit anything.
That's it. Keep it off the rocks.
Exactly. I mean, it's pretty easy peasy, isn't it?
Good. Thanks for being with us, folks.
So, have a good one. And remember, make sure you're an organ donor, give the gift of life, and I'll see you down the road.